You know that feeling, trying to really get your head around something complex. You want those aha moments, but without drowning in detail.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's exactly what we're aiming for today. We're diving into the work of artist Bob Camblin. And we got some amazing material, quotes, bio info, even reviews to help us.
Absolutely. Bob Camblin, he sparks a lot of curiosity. Widely recognized, highly sought after, yet still kind of an enigma.
Right, bit of a puzzle.
Yeah, and these sources give us some great pieces to work with.
So our mission really is to sift through this and figure out, what drove him, how did his art evolve, what are those key themes? Think of it as a shortcut to understanding this really fascinating artist.
That sounds good.
Okay, so where do we start unpacking someone like Camblin?
Well, the beginning is usually a good place. He was born in Oklahoma in 1928. His formal art training started at the Kansas City Art Institute.
Okay, foundational stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That framework is often crucial, isn't it, for everything that comes later?
And his Oklahoma roots, Ponca City specifically, it seems like they left a mark, even if subtly. The Marland Estate, the Pioneer Woman statue.
Mm-hmm. Those early visuals, it seems they did kind of seep into his work later on. You even mentioned the Vivi shorthand for his mother, Viva.
Yeah, like his own personal pioneer woman.
It makes you wonder how those early experiences, those visual anchors, shaped his later symbols, even subconsciously.
It's a compelling connection. And his reading habits, too. Emerson, the I Ching, haiku. That wasn't just casual reading, was it?
No, definitely not. It seems to have really influenced his whole way of seeing. Think about haiga, that Japanese form, painting with poetry.
Right. Capturing elegance and simplicity.
Exactly. That idea of conveying something deep with, minimal elements. You can sort of see echoes of that in his later work.
Makes sense. And he knew other artists early on, too. Forrest Harrisberger in the Air Force Reserve.
Yeah, during the Korean War, they stayed friends, sketched together in California. Those early connections, sharing that passion, that can be really formative.
Support, maybe a bit of creative sparring.
Precisely. Then came Italy. That Fulbright scholarship year sounds like a huge turning point.
Italy, right? The Uffizi Gallery
Right.
and the Capuchin Catacombs in Palermo. That's quite a combination.
Talk about contrast, intense beauty and, well, mortality side by side. And that seems to be where his abstract figurative forms, the ones he called mummies, really developed.
Mummies, wow. That's a striking term. How did those encounters feed into his art, do you think?
Well, it likely pushed him towards exploring those liminal states between life and death, perhaps. And you see specific Renaissance influences, too.
Like Botticelli.
Yeah, Birth of Venus. He did his own version, even a tribute to KPFT radio in it.
Huh, really? That's quite specific. Playful almost.
And Primavera, too. His version had a masked flora with hidden images, hearts, electrons, a Mona Lisa smile.
So he's dialoguing with art history, but totally on his own terms.
Exactly. He's taking these classics and filtering them, layering in his own symbols, contemporary references. It shows a deep understanding, but also a refusal to just, passively accept tradition.
Right, he's actively participating in that conversation. So, shifting focus a bit.
Yeah,
His actual career path, he was a map maker early on.
he was, yeah. Which speaks to a certain kind of precision, maybe?
Yeah.
Special thinking. Then he taught at universities for a while.
But then, 1976, he just leaves academia,
Mhm.
becomes a nomadic artist. That's a big move.
A huge leap of faith, really. Trading security for the art itself, traveling, absorbing different cultures.
What prompted that, do you think? Just a need for freedom?
It certainly suggests a deep commitment to his vision, prioritizing it above all else. And around that time, he was also focused on those intimate drawings and notes from 1950 to 74.
Or was he kept private?
Exactly. They're like this unfiltered glimpse into his mind during those formative years, a visual diary, almost.
Like the raw, unedited feed. And he had this idea that art should speak directly to the viewer's soul, right, without needing interpretation.
A very direct, almost visceral connection he was after, believing in that intuitive resonance over just intellectual analysis.
It's a bold stance. So his style evolved from abstract impressionism to mouches volantes, flying flies.
Right. In the 70s, those optical illusions created with dots and dashes, you can really see the influence of Dada, surrealism.
Like Escher or Dali, maybe. That kind of perceptual play.
Exactly, that kind of mind-bending quality. But then his later work, like the Big Al series or Descent from the Cross, shows something else, more mastery of form, maybe more overt symbolism.
So constantly evolving.
Always pushing. And his collaborations were key, too, with Earl Staley and Joe Tate B&E Productions, the holding firm.
Right. challenging that idea of the solitary genius artist.
Totally. Their shows, Tattoo Show, Joe Tate's Backyard, The Camping Show, sound like they were deliberately poking at the traditional art world.
Like pop-up art events almost, luring art and life.
And the way he'd sign things, anonymous or anonymous artists, that's pretty significant.
A real submergence of ego, isn't it? Focusing on the work, not the name.
Precisely, which ties into his views on galleries and museums, too. He felt they often just repeated artists' mistakes.
So what was his ideal?
Giving an artist the whole environment, total immersion for the viewer, not just fragmented pieces on a wall.
Interesting. And amidst all this, he stressed faith and good work as stabilizers. That sounds quite grounded.
It does. A belief in dedication, hard work, maybe some humility in the process, and his symbols add more layers, like the jars of water.
Turning stumbling blocks into stepping stones. That's a great visual for resilience.
It really is. And the scarecrows, inspired by Günter Grass.
Yeah.
They start as symbols of renewal, but then evolve. Lobster shells, empty larva shells.
Metamorphosis again. That theme just keeps popping up.
It's central, isn't it? Change, transformation. And then there's the text in his drawings.
Right, not just labels. Clues. Puzzles.
Sometimes clues, sometimes maybe red herrings. Part of that guerrilla warfare on a visually saturated, word-oriented culture. His art as puzzles, data problems that could be traps.
So he's actively challenging the viewer. Don't just look, think, question what you see.
Exactly. And his ambition, wanting to remake Goya in 20th century terms, that's aiming high.
Goya, wow. So exploring complex human conditions, questioning reality, using surprise, juxtaposition.
All of that. Pushing beyond objective reality, beyond dreams even. Like Goya, he wasn't afraid of the unsettling or the profound. His early social protest work shows that too.
Mixing social realism and non-objectivity. And he drew inspiration from Cremona Etruscan figures.
Yeah.
Quite a mix.
A real synthesis. And he really valued drawing itself, didn't he? Not just his studies, but his finished works, corrections and all.
Yeah, embracing the process, the visible journey of making the piece.
Exactly. In the 60s, he tried to combine the poetry of Hugo van der Goes with Goya's emotion.
Another fascinating synthesis.
Then the 70s, more focus on life cycles, metamorphosis, that enigmatic search for life's mysteries, with those recurring symbols. Puppets, scarecrows, skulls, murky water.
Things you could maybe decode through Freud, Chirico, Grunewald.
Right, or Kazantzaki's grass. His work invites that kind of deeper reading, draws you into this web of references.
And then that fantastic quote, I don't consider art as heavy. However, if you think it's funny, I'll get serious. And if you think it's serious, I'll make a joke of it.
That just sums him up perfectly, doesn't it? That playful, paradoxical approach, refusing to be pinned down.
Totally. And in the 80s, weaving drawings and watercolors together, creating illusions, hiding images.
Yeah, demanding that you look past the obvious. He even suggested the hidden meanings might only emerge years later, like time-release art.
Okay, let's turn to his own words. These quotes you gathered are really something. The first one, fortunately, some things remain forever, or another 10 years perhaps.
Yeah, that mix of the eternal and the very, very temporary. A great reflection on time.
And the one about memory. As they approached, the memory of songs and music stopped.
Yeah.
That's quite evocative, almost sad.
It is, that sense of fading, things dissolving as you get closer. And he connects science and magic, philosophy and art.
Look into the atom, you get what you need. Look into magic and you get what you need. It's very holistic.
Yeah, seeing them as equally valid paths to insight. And wanting that perfectly average perspective to see the miracles in both, there's certain humility there.
Finding the extraordinary in the ordinary. I like that. And the sixth sense is to be without a doubt. That stresses conviction, intuition.
Inner certainty, trusting your gut. Then there's that tension. Bright day and I soar, how cruel that my soul is attached to this earth and yet that spiritual yearning versus earthly limits.
That feels universal, doesn't it? And self-honesty. I cannot tell a lie to myself for very long. Seems crucial for an artist.
Crucial for anyone seeking authenticity, really, inner integrity, and finding completion, surrendering to nature. That speaks to a deep connection.
Very grounding. His definition of evolution is simple but powerful. The light is all you need. The end is to evolve by doing the best you can.
Just guidance and effort, and the idea that belief amplifies, that our convictions shape reality.
Like focus and faith make a difference. Then this poetic bit. In the balance, patience and yet, freedom again and yet, in silence, the reality can be maintained.
It's like a little Zen koan, isn't it? Capturing that equilibrium, the interplay of opposites.
And his take on love evolving into indifference for protection. That's unconventional.
Definitely less sentimental, maybe more realistic about long-term bonds. It makes you think.
It does. And finding the sublime in the ridiculous, seeking the forgotten, it's a whole way of engaging with the world differently.
Finding meaning off the beaten path. His take on art's purpose evolving is interesting too. Art for art's sake has become art for life's sake, or art for my sake, or art for survival's sake.
Very pragmatic, linking art to basic human drives, even survival, and the advice to step off the train of thought for true power.
Right, breaking free from linear thinking, echoes of emptying the mind for clarity.
And when you think, don't act. When you act, don't think. Being fully present in one state or the other.
Avoiding that mental static, then that lovely image. The cosmos waves as me with tree leaves. Such interconnectedness.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And the humorous address to nature. Well, that's enough about me, Mother Nature. Let's talk about you.
Huh. Yeah, a nice touch of perspective keeps the ego in check.
And his thoughts on arguments.
Yeah.
That understanding can happen intellectually without real communication.
Yeah, distinguishing cognitive agreement from, actual heartfelt connection. It's insightful.
And searching without knowing the quarry, but having faith in the process.
Valuing the journey itself. And distinguishing revolution from evolution, favoring the deeper change of evolution. It's gradual internal shifts he values more. And simple observations like, not a leaf moves and yet we all feel the cool breeze. Capturing those subtle, rich sensory moments.
Moments we usually miss. And this is powerful. Knowledge does not and cannot educate. The feeling cannot be transferred except by experience.
Absolutely. The importance of direct embodied experience for real understanding. You can't just read about it.
You have to live it. And trusting instincts, learning from mistakes, reframing errors as part of the process.
So crucial for creativity. Failure as data. And the warning against the ego, don't let the demon of being right get in. Timeless advice.
Oh yeah, for art, for life, and distinguishing believing from knowing, suggesting a deeper, direct knowing beyond just belief.
Like mystical experience, maybe?
Yeah.
And the idea that real seeing is deceptive, that perception is this fluid web.
Always filtered through us, through relationships, not purely objective. And the fleeting nature of novelty in art, that pressure to always be new.
Right, balancing craft with the demand for constant originality. It's a real tension, and the symbolist's idea that explaining kills the mystery.
That fits Camblin perfectly. He wanted that enigma.
Exactly, and participatory art, the viewer actively making meaning.
Which fits with the puzzle idea. And the artist as a free agent, constrained only by desire, that mirrors his own life.
Totally, that autonomy. Okay, let's look at the masks in the Moonlight video transcript. This little story about Vittorio in Venice.
It sets a scene, doesn't it? The mask, the low water, the haiku. It feels dreamlike, introspective.
Well,
The mask itself is key.
definitely. Playful, old-fashioned. It seems to represent illusion, concealment, the roles we play.
And him thinking about removing it,
Yeah.
wanting to see more clearly.
Seems like it. That search for clarity mirrors Camblin's own artistic quest, I think. And weaving in Buddha, Da Vinci, Socrates, Einstein adds philosophical depth.
Like Victorio's internal monologue with these thinkers.
Yeah,
And then the single fish appearing in the almost empty canal. That's a striking image.
it really is a moment of wonder, like finding hope or possibility against the odds.
A spark of grace.
Exactly. And the idea that perspective nourishes more than material success. He doesn't get a big catch, but he gains insight.
Right. And his decision to keep searching, masked or not. It feels very Camblin. Open-ended, hopeful, restless.
The quest continues. Now, the book reviews. The Art of Everything calls his art a series of questions disguised as images. That really nails it, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And philosophy tries to answer, but the answers are always incomplete, placing his work right there between art and philosophy.
And finding the profound in the ordinary, the trap, the tattoo, the frog, seeing deeper meaning in the everyday.
Looking beyond the surface. And
Yeah.
paradoxes made visible traps that don't trap, that captures the surprise, the subversion to expectations.
Inviting us to rethink assumptions. And themes like illusion, impermanence, the absurdity of clinging, they just keep coming up.
Fear traps, time traps, self-made traps, extending that metaphor into our own psychology.
Yeah, how we ensnare ourselves. But the reviewer also notes a stillness in his art, quiet space for contemplation.
An anchor amidst the flux. And the Zen and the Art of Enlightenment review really leans into that connection with Zen, the I Ching.
Right, emphasizing intuition, interconnectedness, cycles. art as a portal to heightened awareness, a catalyst for self-inquiry.
Encouraging a more mindful, less rigid way of seeing.
The review talks about everyday enlightenment through his art, seeing beauty and absurdity, accepting impermanence, embracing opposites.
Finding insight in the ordinary flow. It even calls the book a meditation tool, an exercise in mindfulness.
Which highlights that active engagement he invites. It's not passive viewing.
No, it's participation. And challenging perception, disrupting linear thought. It's a constant.
Definitely. Now, what about people who knew him? Pete Gershon calls him a mystical trickster figure ripe for rediscovery.
That captures the enigma perfectly. Insightful, but elusive.
And George O. Jackson Jr. saw his art as a book of references, Camblin striving for purity and excellence in art and life. Integrity again.
A holistic dedication. Earl Staley learned from him, called him a creative force, but also exuberant, romantic, and flawed.
A very human portrait. Affectionate.
Makes him more relatable. And Penny Serling remembers him questioning everything, loving collaboration, discussion, arguments, laughter.
Sounds like a really vibrant, curious person, valuing that dynamic exchange.
And Carolyn Farb, a free spirit, art as autobiography, reflecting his joy in making it.
That intrinsic joy seems key. Finally, Earl Staley's account of their friendship. It's quite moving. The shared studio, B&E productions, those experimental shows.
Sounds like a really fertile time, pushing boundaries.
Then Camblin's nomadic life, moving away, contact fading, adds to the elusiveness.
Even for friends. And that description of his last studio, a treasure tableau of the curious and outrageous, a wizard's den with a Mr. Peanut costume.
Huh? It's such a vivid, surreal image, so perfectly Camblin. And giving away his treasure before moving, like a final detachment.
Yeah, not clinging to possessions, maybe not even his own past work.
Yeah.
And his discomfort returning to Houston before he died suggests he'd moved on.
A life lived and a quiet withdrawal. And it's telling that organizing a major museum show has been difficult. He's still somewhat under the radar. Despite the regard for his work, Staley's final words about him as a friend and teacher are a fitting tribute, though.
A lovely testament to his impact.
Yeah.
So drawing this all together, what are the big themes that really stand out for you now?
Well, definitely that constant play between illusion and reality, the deep exploration of metamorphosis, transformation, that search for meaning beneath the surface, the unique way he used text and image, often like puzzles, and just that consistent questioning of how we normally see things.
Those are great takeaways. And like the reviews and anecdotes showed, he remains this captivating enigma. That elusiveness is part of the appeal, isn't it?
It really is. It keeps you coming back, looking closer.
And for everyone listening, hoping for those aha moments and a way into Bob Camblin's world without feeling lost. I really hope this deep dive has sparked some connections with his complex, fascinating vision.
Absolutely. And maybe it leaves us with a final thought. Camblin explored masks and illusions so much. What masks, might we wear in our own efforts to understand things?
That's a great question.
And what might we discover if we took them off, even for a moment? Like Vittorio and Medici is definitely worth seeking out Bob Camblin's art and exploring the questions it raises.